Okay, this is 7th grade lesson 6.5 part 2. In this part of the lesson, we're going to be working with our formula for surface area of a cone to find the slant height, or a missing part of that formula. The standard covered is 7G4 and 6. The page numbers are 276 through 281 and pages 153 through 156. Okay, today we're going to be still working with the same formula that we did when we found the surface area of a cone. It's just that now they're going to give us some information and ask us to find one of the other parts other than surface area. So the key thing is that you understand that we're going to plug information in and we're going to work to isolate whatever they're asking for. So the surface area of a cone is 100 times pi square meters. So that's what they're telling us. So remember, in our formula, surface area of a cone is represented by S. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in right here. So I have 100 pi. Now we're just going to leave it as 100 pi and not change it to 100 times 3.14. We're just going to leave it as 100 pi. I'm going to teach you how to kind of work with it with pi in its symbol form versus its number form. Okay. So now let's go ahead and plug in the other information that we know. They want us to find the slant height, or the L. Okay. So the rest of our formula is we have pi times radius squared. So 5 squared is 25. Then we have our plus sign. And we've got pi times radius. So pi times radius, which, the radius we know is 5. So pi times 5 times the slant. Okay, so you have to remember that this pi symbol is like a number. It's not like it's a letter. And oftentimes when kids are going through to solve these, when we don't use pi as a number, they get confused as to what they're trying to isolate and solve for. So we know that pi is a number, so we are working to get L all by itself, okay? So back in chapter 2, I believe it was, we worked with like terms. So we worked with ones like this, where maybe you would do 5x minus 3x. And when we had the same ending, we would go ahead but they had to be exactly the same here. They had to both be x's. It couldn't be one was an x and one was a y. They had to have the exact same label or ending. Well, when we did that, we would go ahead and do 5 minus 3 and get 2x. And then we would leave it in that form. Well, we're still going to go ahead and do that same concept. So I'm going to rewrite this, having pi in the back side of each of those sets, each of these term sets. With the exception of this one, I'm going to go ahead and leave the L in the very last spot. So if I rewrite this, it's just going to make it easier so that we'll see it in a like term format. So I've got 100 pi equals 25 pi plus, I'm going to just reverse these two, 5 pi times L. And the reason I'm putting that L in a parenthesis is so that I realize that that is a separate term. These are not exactly the same, this one and this one, because this one's got the L on the end. So I can't combine them like I did over here. Okay, but I can go ahead and start to eliminate. Okay, so if I want to work right now to get this by itself, this whole term here, I'm going to have to get rid of this 25 pi. So right now that's a positive 25 pi, so we're going to go minus 25 pi. Okay, that's gone. Okay, so we'll go minus 25 pi. Okay, so what do I have left? I have 75 when I subtract that with a pi sign equals 5 pi times L. Okay, so now I am going to work to get that 5 pi away from the L. I have to get it to just be an L there. Well, what's happening between all of these? They're multiplying. All three of those are multiplying. So to get rid of anything that's there, I'm going to have to go ahead and divide them. So I'm going to divide by 5, and I'm going to divide by pi. So I'll just take them both at the same time. Divide by 5 and pi. So here I'll divide by 5 and divide by pi. So when I divide by pi, that cancels out my pi symbol, because 3.14 divided by 3.14 gives me 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and do 75 divided by 5, and that gives me 15. My equal sign, and all I have left on this side is an L. So we just found out that our slant right here is 15 meters. Okay, not meters squared, it's just meters because it's just that dimension. Okay, so these are a little more complicated, but I think that if you practice them, they actually become pretty easy once you practice the concepts of breaking it down. Okay, once again, you're going to plug in the information you know and then work to isolate that L. Okay, all of these today we're going to be working with L. Now sometimes they do where they give you, and they ask you to find the radius. Okay, so here, information I know. Wherever I have an R, I can put a 12. Okay, so I have a 12 right here. Okay, so here's the thing. I want to go ahead and do that squared. So my surface area, my S is 324 pi, so that's going to go here. So 324 pi equals pi, which we're going to leave as pi, times 12 squared. So 12 squared is 12 times 12, which gives me 144. Okay, that's what this was. I'm just kind of writing it out so you can see it. Then I have a plus sign. And then we said, well, pi stays a pi. The R is 12 because that's what they're telling us here. So I'm plugging in right now. I'm just plugging in my information. And then I have my L that's a slant. So instead of writing this out as pi 12L, I'm going to write it out as 12 pi because it's going to be easier for me to understand it times L. Okay, so here's all of my information plugged in. So my first step, substitute in my information. Simplify, like here where I could simplify my R squared, I needed to do that. Okay, so now we want to work to get this by itself. Okay, in order to do that, I have to get rid of all of this first. So I have to get rid of that 144 pi. So we're going to say minus 144 pi. So whatever I do on one side of my equal sign, I have to do on the other, minus 144 pi. Okay, so 324 minus 144 gives me 180 pi. And then on the other side of my equal sign, I still have this. So 12 pi times L, okay? So I want to work to get L by itself. So this needs to stay. How do I get rid of those things that are multiplying in that same set? I divide by those. So I'm going to divide by 12 pi. Pi's gone, 12's gone. Divide by 12, divide by pi. Pi's gone. I'm going to now do 180 divided by 12. When I do that, I get 15. Equals what I have left on this side that's not crossed out, my L. So here I just found out that my slant height is 15. The label was yards, so it'd be 15 yards. Okay, bear with me. I know it's complicated. I know it's kind of complex, but just keep working your way through it. Okay, and plugging in your information. Okay, work through all of these. If you need more of them to practice, come see me. I'll be glad to practice more of them with you. Okay, so let's try another one. Okay, so plug in the information we know. S, do we know S? Yep, it's right here. So I'm going to write 208 pi. Okay, so I'm done with that part. Equals pi, we still know, okay? And our radius is 8, so this becomes an 8 right here. So I'm going to go ahead and simplify that. So 8 squared gives me 64. 64, and I'm going to put my pi symbol. Okay, instead of putting pi times 8 squared or pi times 64, oftentimes you're going to see the number in front of the pi. So that's why I chose to go ahead and do the 64 pi. Okay, so the next thing, that part's done. I have a plus sign. I have pi and my radius and a slant. So I know the radius was 8. I know pi is still pi. And then I know my slant is what I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so I've substituted in. So that's the first step, substitute in. Second step, work to isolate. So we can't put these two together because they are not like terms. They don't end exactly the same, right? So we want to get this to stay by itself because that's the one that has the unknown term of L, that slant. Okay, so we want to get rid of that 64 pi. Right now it's a positive 64 pi. So we're going to subtract 64 pi. Like terms, minus 64 pi. Okay, so I'm going to write out what I have left. 208 minus 64 gives me 144 with my pi symbol, because those are like terms, so you bring the symbol down, equals, well, not crossed out, I still have 8 pi and L. Okay, so I'm working to get L by itself, which means I have to get rid of that 8 times pi part. So right now the opposite of multiplying is divide by 8 and divide by pi. So I'm just going to do those at the same time. Instead of doing them individually, I'm going to do them at the same time. So I'm going to cross them out individually, which is fine. Divide by pi and 8. So I'm going to divide pi by pi. That cancels out. So 144 divided by 8 gives me 18 equals my L. So now I know that the L, or the slant height, is 18 units or inches. And it's not squared because it's just asking for the dimension. Okay, so I'm going to give you one to try out. Key thing is, first, you want to substitute. Second, combine like terms, so shifting over to the opposite side to try and get that L isolated, and then do a final isolation of that L. Okay, so substitute in first. Okay, what is the slant height of L of the cone? So your radius is 6. So where you have an R up here, you're going to put a 6 and then simplify. Okay, and your S is 102. Okay, so 102, pi. Okay, go ahead, pause your video, set up your equation, work your way through it, and then start your video back up and check your work. Okay, you should have ended up with a slant height of 11 millimeters. Key thing on this is just to understand that that pi is just representing a number. If it is more comfortable for you to go ahead and do your numbers with pi as 3.14, you can go ahead and simplify it that way. It's just that you're going to have to do a few more steps there that I didn't do in this lesson. So good luck with this. Kind of tying into this, if they ever ask for you to find the radius, you'll be able to go through and also find the radius using the same concept of substituting in what you know and then simplifying to isolate that letter. Good luck with this. Key steps: substitute in what you know, simplify anything that you possibly can, combine your like terms, and then isolate that L. Good luck with this.